Hello, my friends. Thank you for taking the time to watch this next episode of how to finish your largest drawing for the Gorgeous Gourds project. In this video, you will learn how to shade the right-hand side of the background for this picture. When you reach the parts of this video that ask you to pause now and try it, please actually pause the video so that you can try it out while it's fresh in your mind. I hope you learn a lot from this video and that you develop some new techniques. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to start at the top and then work my way down. I don't want to start with this section and then be working here, meanwhile smearing all of this. I'm going to really pay attention to the picture still. And it's really easy to get kind of caught up in having it already drawn out and already having done this so many times, but I really think that it is worth your while to still follow along with your finger. And you'll notice that I even still struggle with going through and making sure that I follow along and like move my finger as I go. And it is hard to remember, and it requires you to really spend a lot more time looking back and forth. So now I'm going to go back down here and I'm filling this section in solid with black all the way up past this mark. So I'm adding enough value that my paper is shiny. Now from here it starts to fade out. So I'm going to outline this space to make sure I know how far out I can go. And I'm going to just slowly start pressing lighter on my pencil. I'm just going back and forth and pressing lighter and lighter. I can start paying attention to the details in the wood. So I'm adding in my medium tones going all the way up to here, maybe even to the stem. And then I've got the start of another gourd here. It's very fuzzy though, so I can make it just a general idea of a shape because I'm not actually filling in all of the details. So this line continues and then there's just a little bit of a gap in between it. And then it is darker right here. And I want to go through and add this darker value right here. I can even fill in this dark medium tone. And then it gets a bit lighter right here. So here's my darker value. I'm going to come down right here and along this edge, fill that in. And then we've got this lighter medium tone that comes up. This is right where that little thing is extended out. And then we've got this piece that's kind of lighter in the middle. Now I'm going to use my blending stump just very lightly, and I'm making sure that I'm not accidentally blending all of this together. I want to show the difference in the values still, so I'm not just blending it all together, but I am going through and just darkening up those sections that are a little bit darker. When you use the blending stump over the light areas, you have to do it over the dark areas or else they'll all sort of look the same. Now I could probably lighten up this section just a tad, and I can do that by just taking an eraser and just going over it a little bit. Now pause the video and try out these steps yourself. Next, I'm going to start filling in the dark values over on this side. Now, we didn't fill in these background shapes at the beginning because they're so fuzzy, but I see that this was my diagonal, and right here, it just goes past this diagonal and then comes down with a pretty straight line. This kind of comes out and out like that. So this area, where this shape is connecting all the way up to the stem and along this edge where we've already drawn in our shape, it is just going to be solid black. So I'm going to fill this area in, making sure with my finger that I'm on track. And remember that we are varnishing, So make it dark enough that it's shiny. So there's that dark space. Now I'm going to fill in this area as well. So we've got this fairly dark medium that fades to a lighter medium. We've got this section that's showing here. I'm just continuing to add this dark medium. It does get a little bit lighter. And remember that we are going to be using our blending stumps to blend this out, so we don't want to go too dark. You're just adding in some of the darker values over here. I see that there are actually some lines kind of going up at a slanted angle. And then we've got this edge that comes straight down and comes to a point. And so we're just going to fill this in with our darker medium tone. And then I'm going to add just a nice medium over the top of this. Now I'm going to use my blending stump. I'm trying to make sure that I don't leave any little highlights along the edge on accident because this is all quite dark. I'm going to press a little lighter right through here. And I'm just going to go lightly over the top of this. You can pause the video here until you're finished with this step. So I'm starting to work on adding this leaf. It kind of slopes down and almost touches where that diagonal was. Then it lifts up, and I'm gonna add in just this outside edge right here before I add the stem in the center. Gonna outline that, and it does get skinnier as it goes down. This edge comes out and then is all the way up here. Go. So I'm just going to add in those veins. Now pause the video and complete those steps. So now that we've got the leaf, I'm going to go around the outside edge of this gourd, showing any bumps and variations that I need. So now I'm going to start by adding in this dark value. So we're going to go through and fill that in. Now I'm going to do what we did before, where we fade out to a nice medium tone. And I'm actually going to go through and fill this in lighter than I think I'll need. And I'm going to use my blending stump to go through and help me make it nice and smooth before I add the wood texture afterwards. So I'm going a little bit lighter than I think I'll need to. I'm working along this edge, trying to make sure that you don't see any solid sections of value. It should just be a nice smooth transition. Go ahead and try out these steps yourself. I went quite a bit lighter than I'm actually going to need for a couple of reasons. First, it's going to get quite a bit darker as I go through and blend this together with my blending stump. And I want it to be a shade lighter than I think I'll need even after the blending stump, because I want to go back through and be able to add darker lines over the top without making the overall value too dark. So I'm going to take my blending stump. I'm going to use the entire side of this rather than just the point. So I'm going to take the whole side and I'm going to start all the way up against this darker edge. And I'm just working in small circular motions to blend my graphite into my paper so that it's as smooth as possible. So I'm going up against the edge of this leaf. I'm still using the side of my blending stump. If we were to use the point of my blending stump for this whole section, it would most likely make the end of it really tattered and flat, and that makes it difficult to use for a lot of other reasons you would use a blending stump. So I'm trying not to apply too much pressure to the middle of my blending stump. Something else that happens quite often is that students will snap them when they're using the side of it because they're applying just a little too much pressure. So I'm trying to blend this medium tone into that darker section. Now that I've got this medium tone, I'm going to go back through and I'm going to start working on adding in any value transitions that got kind of smudged or lightened. Sometimes it will take away from your darker spaces when you're working with your blending stump because it's stealing that graphite and spreading it to other areas. So you kind of have to replenish if you have taken graphite from any specific spots. Pause the video now and try out those steps. So I notice that I've got some of this darker value kind of coming out right in the middle, and now we're starting to show some of that texture from the wood. So I'm starting to add in some lines coming from this shadow space where I see them. We've even got just like a solid section of black right here. Comes down. So over here, I see this line that connects from the stem of the leaf back up. So I drew in that line. I might add this darker shadow right underneath this gourd before it fades out to the medium tone. Now over here, I have a couple of spots where I'm just going to add in some more vertical lines to imply that texture of wood. I've got this little bit of dark coming up, a little bit of this shadow showing. And then right on the end of this leaf is a darker line that begins. So we're just going to go through and add these lines to create texture. Now I'm going to take my eraser and just lightly remove some of that background, and I took a little too much. I'm trying to make this little shape right here, so I don't want to over exaggerate it. Sometimes that's easy to do. Now I'm coming over onto this side where I'm gonna just slowly start erasing some of these details, just lightening it up a bit. I'm gonna add this little section by erasing, kind of coming up here. Now I need to go back through over that space that I just lightened and kind of fill it back in, which seems counterproductive, but it is still leaving that texture there that we're looking for. Now pause the video and try it yourself. So now I'm going back to my pencil. I've got a darker edge underneath this leaf that I need to add, and we need to start adding the values on the leaf itself. So I'm going to go through and draw in each of these sections, and I'm only adding as many as I actually see. Don't go overboard. Okay, now up against this edge is a much darker value. So I'm going through and just adding that value first, and now I'm going to add in the texture of the wood. We've got this line that starts here that kind of comes down. This line comes out and sort of continues. This line starts right about here. And this texture comes out. It's actually dark. A little bit farther out than we had. And then we've got some of that wood texture down at the bottom. And I can come through and add some more individual lines. Be a little bit less here. To To finish up the leaf, we're just going to add our little sections of value in between these veins. And it is just a little bit darker up against the bottom and the stem. And up at the top of the leaf, they start to get really skinny. And then we can use our blending stump to make those veins a little bit skinnier. I think they're probably a little bit too bright, so I'm just going to go over them, just a little dusting to make it so that they're not just bright white on this side, because I see that they're just a little bit lighter. However, the highlight on this edge is fairly light, so I'm just gonna erase that and then kind of go up to the edge. This is also not white. Now pause the video and try it. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch this video. I hope that it was helpful to you and that you learned a lot of drawing techniques. And I'm excited to finish this drawing with you, so I'll see you soon for the next episode. Thanks for watching.